All right, welcome everybody to the Practical Prospecting Podcast. This is the podcast from salespeople for salespeople, where in under 15 minutes, sometimes a little bit over, we teach you practical prospecting tips. Today, I'm super excited to have Kevin Hopp on. I've been following you, Kevin, for a while. He is, when I think of cold calling experts, you're probably the first person that comes to mind. Kevin has generated over $100 million in pipeline from what he calls a call-first strategy. But let's just jump right in, Kevin. I want to hear, what does this call-first mentality look like? And how did you use that to generate well over $100 million in pipeline at various different companies?
Well, first off, Jed, thank you so much for having me on the pod. I love podcasting, had a podcast myself for a long time. I got a live cold calling show. Shout out to anyone who wants to watch. We do live cold calling. Oh, that's awesome. If you go to the Call Guys, and Hop on Call is powered by the Call Guys. So let's talk about a call first mentality and what Ronan and I are developing into the conversation first prospecting methodology. Conversation first. I've used that to generate well over 100 million in pipeline. And I guess it's pretty unique, right? Like Ronan and I are trainers and consultants that are trying to now teach other people how to do things. And I find that a lot of the trainers and consultants out there are a little bit, long in the tooth. They're a little bit older, a little bit more like, hey, don't I look like someone who's done this? I've actually done it. I've actually been there. I've done that. I've been the one making the calls for years and years and years and years. And now I've evolved to training literally dozens of teams on how to do this. So 100 million pipeline, I get to that number by combining not only the consulting engagements I've done, where I've helped build SDR teams as a service, but also combining when I ran 2 different outsourced SDR companies. So inside of those companies, I'm talking about, I was the point person for probably 45 different businesses, setting up cold calling campaigns, cold outbound campaigns that intermixed email, social, cold calling. If you add it all up, we've had a number of those be super, super successful. So the number 100 million is a little low, to be honest, but I'm about as front line of a practitioner as you're going to find in the sales development training world.
That's awesome. So I want to dig into your process that you're doing now at the Call Guys and previous consulting opportunities. When you're helping people with cold calling, what does the process or framework look like? Like, talk to a high level, and then we'll drill down deeper in terms of like what you're actually saying. But in general, like, what's the process you're implementing? What are kind of like the most important aspects of, coming up with a cold calling process for these teams?
Great question. So I think of it in 3 key areas, really. It's people, process, and then technology. And, I'm here to deliver the bad news that if you don't have one of those 3, you're going to think that cold calling's dead. You're going to think that prospecting doesn't work. We just got to do inbound marketing. You're going to point fingers every which way if you don't focus on those 3 key areas. And a few, quick notes on that, right? So when it comes to people, the people you have representing your company on the front line going outbound really do matter, right? So folks either trying to like outsource this, or they try to get as cheap a labor as they possibly can because I just need appointments. I just need qualified appointments. Well, I'm here to say that if you develop a holistic sense of what being an SDR really means to your company, and you make a concerted effort to foster and develop talent over time, your people become a very, very important asset and reason why you're going to succeed. The people need a process. The process is not, I'm going to hire an SDR. Oh, I hired an SDR. They're going to do outbound for me. That's what a lot of VPs in sales, a lot of older sales leaders say. You know what? I just need a warm body and they'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it really doesn't work that way. And I only know that because I'm a 5-time first hire into businesses, okay? So before I got to consulting, I was constantly the first hire. Always involved in these ventures where I was not walking into a HubSpot or Outreach where it's like, all right, cool, here's your territory. You get 12 inbound leads a month. You get, never had that. So I've had to create process. So the biggest thing when it comes to process is don't leave some of the bigger items up to chance. The bigger items are, can you identify your target prospects? Can you find their accurate contact information, and can you engage them in a scientific fashion, right? So I'm a big fan of the concept that outbound sales is science and art. That art is going to be the way you apply your skills. And there's a certain, magic that some salespeople have to be super comfortable in communicating with other people. That's where a little bit of the artistic component comes in, where you can't just formulaically say that every person should say this every single time. But on the scientific front, you need to have a process-driven strategy for how you're going to reach out to people. And then, of course, the last piece of this is technology. It is 2023. It is not 1985. It is not 1995. This is not your dad's prospecting that needs to happen. When our parents were prospecting back in the day, you could pick up a rotary phone and make 12 dials in the day and have 4 or 5 conversations and set a meeting. And that's just what it was, right? The decline of cold calling really started with caller ID. As soon as caller ID came up, it's like, oh, I don't know who you are. I'm not picking up the phone. People started to get more and more skeptical. So the big thing that wrote that in, I say, is cold calling is not dead, but you're probably not doing it right? Because if you're not using highly trained people with a proven process, with technology that makes them into superhuman, gives them superhuman capabilities, then you're simply not going to have the success that you want.
That's an awesome breakdown. So people, process, technology. I want to focus on the last one first because I'm really curious. Do you think it's necessary to have these power dialers? There's a bunch of them now. They're getting really popular. Like power dialers, parallel dialers, verified contact data. Like a lot of people are investing in multiple contact tools when in the past you'd maybe just have Zoom info and then you're good to go. Or verifying phone numbers. There's a lot of services that do this for you. Do you think that it's necessary to invest in these types of tools to have success over cold calling? Or do you think it's fine if you just get away with good people and good process? What's your opinion on the technology side of things?
When it comes to technology, the analogy is boulders up a hill, right? So if I want to move a boulder up a hill, you can do it with people, right? In high school, I was on the football team in high school. One of the workouts we used to do is our coach drove a Suburban. We'd go to the bottom of a hill. He'd put it in neutral, take his foot off the brake, and 5 of us would push the Suburban up a hill, right?
Sounds awful.
It was kind of fun, but it's just a great example of okay, you can move a Suburban up a hill with people. And it was rah, and it was all right, guys, let's go, rah, right? What happens? You do it 3 or 4 times and you're like, coach, I gotta take a break. And now all of a sudden the Suburban can't get up the hill, right? So a lot of sales leaders are counting on this rah, come on, make your calls today mentality. When, like I said before, cold calling is so hard because pickup rates are so low, right? So one of the other things that would be a good thing for me to mention here is a hot take of mine is life is just too short to listen to the phone ring all day, right? Yeah. A lot of SDRs that don't have dialing tech, they're spending so much time listening to the phone ring, leaving custom voicemails, and then you get in this toxic cycle that I've seen again and again and again, where an SDR thinks that productivity is making the calls, to listen to the voicemails, to leave the voicemails, to send the cold email, to make the calls, and then we do this, and the SDRs burning themselves to the bone, because once again, they're pushing the SUV up the hill with their legs, where teams that invest in technology are saying, hey, I need the Suburban up the hill. I'm going to put you in the driver's seat. I need you to press your foot on the gas, and you're going to get up the hill way faster, way more reliably. And you could do it again and again and again and again, right? So technology just allows, it takes the human element and the human struggle out of the process of cold calling. So let's put it this way. I do not consult with people that do not buy dialing tech, period, full stop.
Yeah.
If you're not going to buy dialing tech, I'm not going to work with you, because it is extremely important to being successful with cold calling.
Yeah, and I agree as well. I feel like you're just hindering yourself. You're always going to be a step behind everybody else who's using it. One thing I'm curious about, though, if you're using power dialers, this sort of technology, a big excuse I hear from a lot of SDRs or people, whether it's on LinkedIn, whatnot, is that they like to make targeted, personalized calls. They like to, they'd rather make 20 to 30 like really targeted calls as opposed to making 100, 150 calls. So what's your opinion on that? Can an SDR get away with just having just a go-to pitch without personalizing or spending time looking at their LinkedIn before they make that call? And what's your opinion on that sort of opinion?
Well, Jed, open up a can of worms, why don't you? That's a can of worms, my friend. So how that works is you should do your strategy and your your planning and your personalization by list. Right? Now, if I spend, so here's a hypothetical or a real question for you, Jed. If I spend 30 minutes researching Steven before I call him, keep in mind, Steven doesn't know me. Steven's never heard of me. Steven's never been called by me before. Then after 30 minutes, I pick up the phone and I call him. Does that make him more or less likely to pick up the phone call?
Neither.
It doesn't affect. It has no effect, right?
Yeah.
It has no effect. So the folks that say, hey, well, we're strategic. I'm not dialing for dollars. 100 calls. Are you kidding me? You're going to have the same conversation rate as everybody else. Therefore, if you make your 30 calls, you're only going to connect with what? 3 people? 3 people? If you're lucky. And then with those 3 people, you're only having 3 conversations. So the chance of you getting a meeting, a good conversion rate's like 7 to 8% on the phone on an ice cold call. So you're not going to get a meeting that day.
Yeah.
Right? So my point is, do your list building so that you understand that the value you can provide to this person is the same on this list, on the whole list. Not on the person by person basis, just because of the exact question I asked, which is it makes them no more or less likely to pick up the phone. And you spend so much time with this personalization. And then once again, this illusion, this toxic. So let's add that to the toxic wheel of SDR unproductivity, lack of productivity, right? So, all right. So I get in the day, I check my emails, then I do a bunch of research, ton of research. Then I make my 30 strategic dials. Then I have 2 to 3 conversations. Then I leave a bunch of voicemails. Then I do it again. And to get to the level of productivity where I'm actually having conversations and actually booking meetings at an aggressive pace, it just takes so much more time, effort, and energy. And the SDR confuses, I did all this research on LinkedIn. I know where Jed went to middle school, high school. I know that his mom's a Cincinnati Reds fan. I know that they confuse that with productivity when all that really matters is, does Jed have the business problems that you exist to solve? That's what really matters, right? So just go have conversations with a ton of people like Jed about business problems and valuable solutions to them, and forget about all the silly research thing, right? And people think that like it warms up the cold call. No, it doesn't. Like, if I get a cold call from somebody and they say, hey, I saw you posted on LinkedIn, I'm like, cool, I'm busy. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right? That's how buyers really act. Unless you have like there could be, this is the caveat here is when you have connections, okay? Like real meaningful connections. If you called me and you said, hey, Ronan and I are buds, and I was having a quick conversation with Ronan, and he told me to call you, I'm listening. Ronan's my business partner. I'm listening, right? And that works really well. So that would be a case where I'm going to tell people out there, don't like mass call referrals. Take the time to call and leave that voicemail. If I don't pick up, say, hey, Kevin, I was trying to reach out to you because I had this long conversation with Ronan. Ronan and I go way back. He told me to call you, like to connect sometime this week. That's different. So that's my take on that. Don't mistake research for being productive.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And just to kind of like recap what you said there. So it sounds like if you have like a true like referral or that piece of warmth, spend that time, maybe change your opener and lead with that. But otherwise, Kevin, it sounds like your opener, your pitch is pretty much the exact same time or exact same for everybody you call, right? Like you've got your opener nailed, your pitch nailed. It's this exact same thing every single time you call. So there's no reason to even spend time researching for any sort of personalization.
Yeah. I think that, there is this confusion between all of the research I know about you makes you more likely to take a meeting.
Yeah.
When at the end of the day, the way that real buyers and real decision makers respond and act in the market is they don't take time unless it really has something in it for them. And the something in it for them isn't, oh, I've done so much research on you. I read your K1. I saw that you got funding from Sequoia. Yeah. So what? What's in it for me? So the conversation first methodology that we employed the call guys is 100% focused on turning SDRs into business people that can have business conversations instead of appointment setters, telemarketers, spammers. We don't do any of that. The folks that go through our boot camp, the folks that we consult with, that we do training with, they end up having these business conversations with people at an aggressive rate on the phone. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know this was possible. Number one. Number two, they learn so much more about business, and good business people can be good salespeople and vice versa, right? Like, to be a good salesperson, you have to fundamentally understand how businesses operate.
Yeah. That's huge. So we've got time for like one more question, and that leads me to the last question I want to ask, which is, if I'm like an SDR, somebody who's cold calling, listening to this podcast right now, and I want to, become a better, have better business acumen, become a better business person on the phone, what's probably the biggest mistake you can think of that folks make, and the biggest thing they can do to improve to, have better business acumen on the phone, become better at cold calling in that sense?
It's a great question. So something that I have a very unique perspective on because of my career. Like, if you think about my career, I was telling my wife the other day, how many Kevin at email addresses have I had? Like 60. Like, for a while there, when I was doing outsourced stuff, I used to get a Kevin at for like every client I had. And it was, I'm the king of Google profiles, right? Like, at one point I had like 20 at one time, because it's like a login for every customer I had. But my experience there of having to think about all these different businesses' challenges and how they fit in as solutions in the market, I've had to do this again and again and again and again. I've learned that companies create a dogma around what they do. And they create this, we're the best provider in the space. We're the gold standard in the space. And when you go out to the market and you talk to actual people, you get a much better sense of where you actually line up in the market. And then when you get an honest sense of where you line up in the market that's not fed by marketing internally and sales internally and what your VP of sales tells you, then you can start to go, there's only really 1, 2, 3 things that differentiate us from competitor A, B, or C, or incumbent solution, right? Realizing that, and not just buying everything that your VP of sales and your marketing team tells you and feeds you about, we're the number one, we're the just actually doing some market research and actually taking some time to go have conversations with people that might buy your stuff. Like, for me, my uncle is the SVP of finance at Four Wheel Parts. It's an $800 million public company. He buys software, right? And my other uncle's a VP of finance at a big finance company. They buy software. So I've had a lot of conversations with them about different solutions to different things and the way they think about it. And if you can talk to buyers in a very candid way, you start to understand, oh, okay. There's a lot of rah-rah marketing done internally to make sales reps believe certain things about the market. And leveling of your business acumen is understanding that, no, we aren't the greatest things in sliced bread, but we are very, very different and valuable in this way and this way and this way. And when you can uncover that little list and have that in your back pocket, that is what's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome. Really appreciate you sharing those tips. I thought there was a lot of really good stuff. Great storytelling as well, man. I appreciate it. Kevin, thanks for joining. Where should we point the audience? Where can they connect with you?
LinkedIn's the easiest one. If you guys go to LinkedIn, Kevin Hopp, I don't think there's another one out there. There might be, but I got a little shaka hand signal. That's a call emoji in my name. You can go to thecallguys.com And you guys can find us on YouTube and on LinkedIn Live. We do live cold calling. We are probably the only consultants and trainers out there that actually do what we preach live every day. Do you know what I mean?
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even know you were doing live cold calling. I got to check that out myself. Awesome.
Yeah,
well, thanks everyone for listening.